my channel for today's Christmas recipe video. If this is your first time seeing my channel, then I'm really happy you stopped by. I've been really enjoying making these seasonal recipe videos, as well as sharing some bonus recipes in my day in the life, get it all done type videos. So if you enjoy what you see today, then I would love it if you would let me know by hitting that like button down below. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming recipe videos as well. As usual, today's recipes are all gluten and dairy free because that is what suits my dietary needs, but they're all super easy recipes to modify to whatever flours or milks that you have on hand. And if you're someone who freaks out when you hear gluten and dairy free, then rest assured that you can't even tell I've substituted the ingredients in any of these recipes. They're all perfectly delicious as is. I'm sharing a whole mix of recipes today. I've got a Christmas breakfast idea, as well as a dinner recipe, and of course some Christmas baking, all of which incorporate some festive flavors that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. So let's go ahead and get into the first recipe. The Christmas breakfast recipe that I'm sharing today are these gingerbread waffles. This is actually my go-to oat flour waffle recipe, but I added a little bit of a Christmas twist with some gingerbread spices. So you can see my little helper is helping me pour the oat flour in, as well as the baking soda, but you'll see she soon gets fired for making too much of a mess. So for now she's helping. And then I'm going to mix the wet ingredients, which are whatever milk you choose. I used almond milk because that was what we had on hand. Then I'm mixing it with some maple syrup as well as some vanilla extract. Next, I'm pouring in some flax eggs as well as some melted coconut oil. For the spices, I didn't use any exact measurements, but you can look up some gingerbread spice mixes online. I just used cinnamon, ginger, and nutmeg. I was pretty mild with the spices. I didn't want it to be too overpowering, but there was definitely a hint of gingerbread in them, which was perfect for us. But you can add as much as you'd like to your taste. Just mixing everything together, and then I'm going to pour it into our waffle maker. Just takes a couple of minutes, and then when it comes out, you have the perfect gingerbread waffle. To go with our waffles this morning, I wanted to make a winter fruit salad. This salad is pretty simple to make, but the combinations of the different fruits just give me such winter vibes, especially the pomegranate and the clementine. Those are just fruits that I always have in the winter time. I'm adding some kiwi as well as slicing up some banana. For the pomegranate, I was a little bit lazy. I just bought some of them already in a package. I'm giving my little helper a second chance to redeem her position in the kitchen, but she was just interested in snacking. You could serve this salad as is. It tastes perfectly fine without any kind of dressing or anything like that, but I did decide to make a dressing with this, which was basically just lime and honey. I'm juicing the lime, and then I will add a tablespoon of some local honey and mix it all together and pour it into the salad. This would be a perfect combo for Christmas morning brunch or just any breakfast over the holidays. The gingerbread flavor along with those winter fruits was just perfect. I topped my waffle with some coconut whipped cream and a little bit of maple syrup. The dinner recipe that I'm sharing is kind of a not so typical Christmas dinner, but the combination of the flavors with the cranberry and the thyme really give those Christmas vibes still. I'm starting off with a side dish of potatoes and carrots. I'm just putting them all on a tray, and I'm actually going to be adding some asparagus as well. I found the carrots and potatoes needed longer to cook, so all I did was threw the asparagus on a little bit later into the cooking. I just topped the vegetables with a little bit of olive oil and threw them in the oven to cook while I made the rest of the dinner. To cook the pork chops, I just seasoned them with olive oil and thyme, and then I seared the outsides and continued to flip until they reached the proper internal temperature. While this was cooking, I made the cranberry sauce using some vegetable broth, as well as some maple syrup and a little bit of Dijon mustard. I also poured in about a cup of frozen cranberries. When the pork chops were done, I just took them off of the pan and set them aside with some tin foil. I'm pouring the cranberry sauce into the same pan to simmer, and I'm stirring it frequently until it reaches a sauce-like consistency. Once the cranberries have kind of softened into a sauce, I put the pork chops back in to soak up the flavors, and then they are ready to serve. I think this is a great Christmas dinner option for anyone who is restricted by COVID and unable to go have their traditional large family dinners for Christmas. This is a special dinner that you can have at home, but it's still super easy to prepare. Moving on to some Christmas baking, this next recipe that I'm sharing is a newfound favorite of mine, and it is a gluten-free vegan pie crust. You'll see I'm using it in a couple of different ways this holiday season for some of my Christmas baking. So I'm just mixing together the dry ingredients of flour and salt, whisking them together before I add in 6 tablespoons of chilled vegan butter. I like using the Melt brand. I'm now just mixing them together until they are fairly well combined, and then I will finish it off by using my hands to form a dough. At this point, I'm going to form the dough into a disc shape and wrap it in some plastic wrap to be refrigerated for about a half hour. After it's been chilled for a half hour, I take it out and I'm going to place it between 2 sheets of parchment paper to roll out. You can see it's a little bit cracking, but this dough is really forgiving in that you can reform it later, so don't stress about any cracks or anything like that. It can all be fixed as you go. Once I have a big enough shape of crust for my pan, you can see I'm going to do a little bit of a flipping maneuver. Again, it's best to just do it and not stress. And if you see any cracks, not to worry because it can all be totally reformed in the pan here. I'm using my fingers to fix up any of the cracks or chunks that fell out. The recipe recommends not getting too fancy with this crust, I think because it is so crumbly. So I really like using this pie dish that is just kind of in a unique shape. It's just a good way to get a pretty looking crust without getting too fancy. So I just go around the edges and I kind of clean it up, adding a little bit of dough here and there. Once it's all cleaned up, you can use whatever pie filling that you would like. I've done this before with a pumpkin pie, which is what the recipe is written for. But today I'm actually going to make a meat pie because that is one of our traditional Christmas recipes every year. So I'm just using a mix that my mom had already made for her pies. This was my first time doing one of these pies with a top, and so as you can see, the flip of the top was a little bit more rough than the bottom. But again, I was able to kind of fix up any of the cracks with my fingers and just reform the pie crust. Now I'm just going to do the same thing with the edges just to kind of clean it up a little bit. When that is done, it goes right in the oven and then it'll be ready to enjoy. I'm actually going to now use the same crust recipe to make some smaller pie tarts. And so I use the same technique to roll it out, and I'm just using this mug, which is the perfect size for the tin that we're using. I find for this, it helps to keep the dough a little bit thicker as it does still crumble a little bit. But again, you can fix up any cracks as you go. I only did a few of these kind of as a test run because it was the first time using this crust for these tarts, but they turned out really well and I'll definitely be trying this again. I'm making 2 flavors of these tarts today. I have a jar of mincemeat as well as a can of cherry pie filling. I'm just scooping them into the tarts and then they'll be ready to go in the oven. The next Christmas baking recipe that I'm sharing is this orange cranberry loaf, which was super delicious. Here I'm just mixing up the wet ingredients, which was some coconut milk, as well as some applesauce. I'm adding in the sugar now, as well as some vanilla extract and apple cider vinegar. The recipe also calls for some flax egg, and I'm also zesting an orange and adding that into the wet ingredients. Now for the dry ingredients, I'm adding some oat flour as well as some baking soda and baking powder. Then I have about a cup of fresh cranberries that I've mixed in with a little bit of flour, and I'm mixing all of the wet and dry ingredients and folding in the cranberries. It's ready to go into the loaf pan, but I highly recommend using parchment paper to line your pan. This made all the difference for being able to easily take the loaf out without any crumbling or sticking. I'm just smoothing out the top and then it's going to go into the oven. It looks totally delicious as is when it comes out, but of course I wanted to add some icing. So this is just a mixture of oat milk along with some icing sugar and a little bit of vanilla. I just used an electric mixer to mix it until it was the right consistency, and I am spreading it on top now. I'm also topping it with a little bit of extra orange zest for flavor and also for look. Today's Christmas recipes video. I hope you enjoyed seeing these festive food ideas for the season. And if you try any of these recipes that I shared today, I'd love it if you'd tag me in your stories over on Instagram. I love seeing when you guys try the recipes that I share here. And I'm curious to know what some of your favorite Christmas recipes are, so let me know in the comments below. What's that one thing you have to eat every year for it to feel like Christmas? Thanks again for watching. Merry Christmas to you all, and I will see you in the next video.